Hey guys, it's Ed with Solomon's Landscape and Design here again. I want to take a couple minutes to talk about different grass types that are out here in our area. We're in the upstate of South Carolina. I know we talked about last time seed versus sod, and we talked about different grass types. So the major categories that we have in the upstate are cool season, which mainly is fescue, bluegrass, things of that nature. The main one here in our area is the fescue. Um, and we do also have ryegrass. You see that in the wintertime, through the wintertime. Usually that one dies back in the summertime. So those are those are two main ones, grasses in the upstate for cool season. There's also warm season grasses, which are like Bermuda grass, Zoysia grass. We do have a little bit of centipede and a little bit of St. Augustine, but mainly Bermuda grass and Zoysia grass are the two main ones here. So those are two main categories of grasses. And so we'll do a couple of parts here, and depending on what you wanted to use, we will talk about both of them. So we'll talk about cool season, since that's the first one that came up. Cool season grasses being fescue mainly in our area, a couple others, but mainly the fescue grass. And some of the benefits of the fescue is the fact that it looks green all year long. It looks really good and stays green all year long. The downfall, it is a cool season grass and fares better farther north. We are in a transition zone, meaning we can do both one or the other, but not either well. So with that said, fescue grass does really well. The downfall is watering is a constant. So if you don't have an irrigation system, it's not going to look really healthy, really well. The other couple tips on that, typically in our area, we're mowing it as high as our decks can mow, which is typically the 4 to 4.5 inches that our commercial mowers can mow. Now, with a residential mower, it may be 3.5 inches, but however high you can get that deck, go ahead and cut that grass as high as you can on the fescue. Again, being a cool season grass, basically what that means is the fact that the grass is actively growing in the cool season, or fall and winter time. And then, so fall, winter time, and then sort of that springtime, a lot of people are seeing it pop. I mean, you can see some flowers back here, so it's starting to really pop. Now, come the summertime, the fescue will actually go into a dormancy. It's dormancy period, and it's not actively growing. It's still growing, but not as much as it would through the fall and winter time. The other problem is it really doesn't like heat. So if it's in full-blown sun, I would definitely not recommend it. Generally speaking, it fares better in shade. And so if you have a lot of trees in your yard, a lot of shade areas, then it could be potentially a good grass to use. Just know that you pretty much will have to water on a constant basis to have a really good looking stand of grass, because of the type of grass. It just can't stand the heat and the humidity that we have. The other thing that we typically see with it through the summertime, especially later into the summertime with the higher temperatures, the higher humidity, we see a lot of potential for diseases. Pests and diseases is usually a big thing. Brown patch is a big one that fescue yards typically have around here. So again, beautiful grass. It looks great all year round, especially after it's freshly mowed. There's nice green and green stripes in it. The downfall is it just requires a lot of input and a lot of care. And so that's the fescue and cool season. All right, so now we talked about cool season. So now we're going to be talking about warm season grasses. And so with the warm season grasses, typically in our area, you're seeing Bermuda grass and Zoysia grass. Sometimes you'll see Augustine and St. Augustine and centipede grass here as well. But the two majors are Bermuda and Zoysia grass. They're called warm season grasses, well, because they're actively growing in the warm summer months, and then go dormant. And you can tell it's dormant because they go brown in the fall and winter time. So the good thing about these grasses are, one, they're really hardy and really suited to the heat, um, and the humidity, and so they do really well with fairly minimal inputs. Watering is not necessary. Once it's established, it's not nearly as important as your cool season, and then it still looks really good and really thick through the year. There's a couple of differences between the Bermuda and the Zoysia grasses, mainly texture and thickness. The Bermuda grass is more common. A lot of times it's a very fine, or sometimes known as wiregrass. So the blades are really wiry and thin. It looks really good. It can. You can irrigate it. You don't have to irrigate it. For example, we've had properties where they have the fertilizer and weed control on the Bermuda grass, one with irrigation, one without. And to be honest, it was hard to tell the difference. I know the one with irrigation was watering regularly. There was a slight bit of difference, but overall, for the amount of water that they were putting out there and spending on watering, there wasn't a huge difference. The only difference came when we had dry spells for like a month with no rain, a month and a half with no rain. The non-irrigated Bermuda would actually start going into dormancy, start browning out a little bit. But then as soon as it rained, literally within a week, it would green right back up. So it's really, both grasses are really good for this area. Bermuda grass is a little bit more hardy. It grows a lot faster, and these are creeping grasses. So what they do is they'll start here, and then they'll creep a little bit, root in, and they also will spread underground as well as, and then blades on top as well. So it'll kind of creep, root in, creep, root in, creep, root in. So they will recover a lot faster. They'll fill in spots really well. Bermuda grass typically will creep from where it was last year to where it ends up at the end of the season, usually about 8 inches in one season. So it works really well, fills in areas, very, very easy to keep and maintain because it loves the heat and it loves the summer, so it doesn't necessarily need a lot of water. The downfall to Bermuda grass and Zoysia grass is the fact, because they are creeping grasses, is those beds. They'll tend to creep in just a little bit more into those beds, so you constantly have to edge. You constantly have to spray out the edges because it always creeps in. So we talked about a lot about Bermuda grass. We'll go ahead and talk about Zoysia grass right now. And so essentially it's very similar to Bermuda grass. It doesn't recover as fast. It's a little bit slower growing. It still creeps. It's, generally speaking, the blades are a lot thicker and wider. There are some fine bladed Zoysia grasses, but they're still usually generally wider than the Bermuda grass blades. The other thing about Zoysia is it essentially is really super, super thick and really hard to mow unless you have a really good quality high horsepower motor, because it is really so thick and dense. And it's like you can literally walk on it barefoot, and it's almost like walking on a really plush carpet. It is like the Cadillac of grasses, and it's fairly low maintenance as well. Like I said, it does grow slower. I've seen Zoysia grasses where we actually were helping out with Senior Action several years ago, a number of years ago, I guess, and basically helping seniors with their landscaping. And we would only literally cut the grass like once a month. And there was a couple of properties that had Zoysia in some areas, and realistically a month later, and you're mowing, but it's, you're only mowing a couple inches where everything else was, foot or more, generally speaking. So like I said, it is a really slow grower. It does really extremely well in heat as well, and it looks great. And it also is really good for weed control. A lot of times, because it is so thick, it usually pushes out a lot of weeds and prevents weeds from growing, and so that's a benefit to it as well. Obviously, zoysia grass, because it's a Cadillac grass, it tends to cost a little bit more to initially install, but once it's in, I mean, it's in. So both Bermuda and zoysia grasses are great grasses. You can't hardly kill them. That's what I typically recommend for most homes, especially if there's a lot of sunlight. They do really well in all kinds of conditions. There are zoysia grasses, there's Bermuda grasses that do pretty well in shade as well. Again, they're warm season, so I say typically 6 hours of sunlight or more is typical. There are some that can take less sunlight than that, but again, just check your local suppliers for that. So again, I hope that helps. I know it's a little bit of a long video about different grass types, so hopefully we'll break it up in a couple pieces. If you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, drop them below. Any comments, drop them below, and we'll reply as soon as we can. But again, those are different grass types that we have in the area, and I appreciate your time, and you take care. Have a great day. Stay safe out there.